Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington. And I am joined today by Melissa Reiner of Hey Sweets. And thank you so much for coming by here today. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks for having me. I am a custom dessert buffet baker. I have owned my own business since 2013, and I focus more on mini desserts.
So besides the traditional wedding cake, right, that most people think about, that there's, lots more varieties, especially now in 2018. So why don't you talk a little bit about like kind of the different options you guys offer?
Yeah, so I always tell everybody that kind of asks me about, a menu. So I have a menu on my website. It's a guideline of desserts, but being a custom dessert company, sky's the limit. So I can, if you have a family dessert that you absolutely love and you want it at your event, I will gladly take that recipe and create it into a mini version for you guys. And I did a wedding back in 2014 that was a fusion wedding. It was an Eastern Indian and Hispanic, and ended up taking Grandma's Tres Leches recipe that was in Spanish, translated it, and had it for everybody at the wedding. It was unique and fun. So having the options to go from a cake, which has been traditional for many, many years, to cookies, brownies, tarts, mini pies, marshmallows. Really big into custom marshmallows. They're a lot of fun. You do not have to have a fire to enjoy a marshmallow. Parfaits, kind of sky's the limit.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when I was kind of doing my pre-podcast research, that like, I do think nowadays couples really want to customize kind of every part of their wedding, whether it's the dress or the vows or, the venue, and desserts is no different, right? I mean, you want your guests to enjoy, they obviously want to enjoy.
Right.
And so, I mean, are you seeing a lot more of that nowadays, that customization?
The customization has been on a forward trend for probably, I would say, the last 3 to 4 years, because a lot of people don't like cake. And when you show up to a wedding and there's a big, beautiful cake, don't get me wrong, they're gorgeous, but that means that everybody's going to have cake. Whereas when you walk in and you see a cutting cake, which can be anywhere from a small 6-inch, intimate, beautiful cake in the middle to, a 2-tier with a 10 and an 8-inch, gives a little more stability. And then a variety of just cookies and brownies and cake pops and macarons. You get so excited. You're like, oh, dessert. And they're mini, so you can have more than one, and it creates a variety. So it is a big trend, and a lot of people are going away from the big cakes.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too. I mean, and I don't know if this is blasphemous as a wedding vendor, but like, I don't really like cake.
A lot of people don't.
And, I was saying off air, if I ate a cake at every wedding that, we filmed, it would be not a good, situation.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that even as somebody that films, I might like just a little snack, or as a guest, right? I mean, you want to have those options as somebody that, might not like cake.
Right. And it's also nice because you can take, the couples, everybody has different likes. Some may not like chocolate and some may not like vanilla, or you don't like the cake that you have pie. I have a bride and groom coming up this summer. The bride is not a sweets person at all. She was totally hands-off in choosing the desserts, left it up to her groom and her mom. And, Grandma had a definite opinion. She wants chocolate. There was no chocolate on the menu, and Grandma's like, there has to be chocolate. So we're doing a special chocolate dessert just for Grandma.
That's good. And we were talking to just, it is so funny to me nowadays, though, that, the cake and the cutting of the cake is still so like prevalent where, we'll film a lot of weddings where, there might not be a, bouquet toss has kind of gone out in certain regards, or like we didn't do a garter toss belt thing at, our wedding. I had filmed too many kind of crazy ones of those.
Yes.
I told Alan, I was like, my DJ, I said, I'm not going to crawl on the floor and do that. But, I was telling you off air, even, we had a wedding on Monday, and this was, I would say, more of an eclectic couple. They certainly had their, it was just different. It was kind of more off, I would say, like an offbeat bride kind of wedding. And, one of the traditions they still had, besides they had a great dessert table, with, cookies and whatnot, but they wanted to cut a cake. And talk about that, with parents and everybody and still wanting to have that, but then you guys offering other things.
So, yeah, one of the big things that everybody expects tradition, right? There's traditions in every wedding, things that when you go to, you expect to see them. When they aren't there, you're kind of like, oh. Parents still expect to see their children do a cake cutting ceremony. Perfect example at the wedding tour this last weekend. Soon-to-be bride and her mom were talking with me, and she was looking at the table, and she's like, "This beautiful." And she looks at her mom and she goes, "I don't want a cake." And her mom's like, "You're having a cake." And she's like, "No, I don't like cake. I don't want a cake." And I said, we can just do a small cutting cake. And then that way you have this ceremony. It makes the parents and grandparents, happy. And then you can take that cake and either serve your wedding party or the parents and the grandparents. And so the trend is going more towards the small, intimate cutting cake that's kind of the focal point of a dessert table, but then not everybody has to have the exact same dessert. Open it up into a dessert table and you get a variety, and it makes everybody happy.
Yeah, and I mean, we've even done ones lately where like the bride will have a cake and the groom will have a cake, and they'll both have, Yeah,
that tradition, you don't see a lot of groom's cakes anymore. I have, I've been in business since 2013. I have yet to do a groom's cake.
Wow.
Yeah. I've never been asked for a groom's cake.
Huh.
Now, anniversary cakes, I get asked to do all the time because it's hard to keep a cake good for a year frozen. You can do it. It takes a few steps, but by the time you get done with your wedding, you're home, you leave for your honeymoon, it takes a couple of days to freeze a cake and wrap it so it's still good a year later. So I do a lot of anniversary cakes a year later.
That's funny. We got married at Salty's back in 2016, and so they had given us, I think, we had saved the top part or whatever, and so we had it in the fridge or the freezer for a year, and I think we were kind of under the assumption that it was wrapped and it was like whatever. Oh. And so at the, last year at the anniversary, Dorothy pulls it out and like it still had like the flour on it.
Oh, no.
Like, they had and she ate it. I mean, I don't know how it tasted.
You're like, yeah, I'm not touching that.
But they had just put it in the box, but it looked sealed to us, so we didn't even.
Oh, yeah. So there's a few steps to try and keep it moist to where it'll taste kind of the same as it did on your wedding day. But, honestly, I would much rather just remake your cake for you if you want to do that ceremony. A lot of people don't continue with that tradition. My husband and I did it, and we've been married 18 years. And my cake was okay. I think it was more the nostalgia of the wedding and remembering everything. And I was like, yeah, this is good. No, it's not good.
So talk a little bit about you, personally. You said you started the business in 2013. What were you doing before that, or what kind of led you down that path?
Well, before that, I was a mom, worked in the banking industry, had kids. I have 2 boys. They're teenagers now, but my youngest needed a lot more attention. He has some learning disabilities. So I have, since my own wedding, which was huge, took lots of planning. I kind of filled in for friends and family over the years of, helping them facilitate their weddings, which then led to the creation of Hey Sweets in 2013, kind of as I can do this in my spare time. Joined the guild, the Snohomish Wedding Guild, and it blew my business up ridiculously fast, thanks to an amazing photographer, an amazing wedding coordinator. They just took my business and our concept and literally blew up our business. Crazy busy. I did have a business partner at that time. We've since parted ways, took a little bit of a hiatus, and over the last, just over about the last 15 months, really started going again. And because my boys don't need me at home anymore. I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. I'll have 2 in high school. So I've really had a lot of time to focus and rebuild Hey Sweets to what I originally envisioned it to be, where I can focus and give that undivided attention to each of my customers. And so it's been phenomenal. This year has been great. I am booked to the hilt, and already, which this has never happened, I'm booking a year out in advance, which is awesome for me.
Is that, and I don't know the answer to this, is that typical for desserts? I mean, videography
No, desserts are more like 4 to 6 months in advance, but there's been such an increase. And I think it comes along with booking venues, right? They are typically a year to 2 years in advance. And you're finding wedding coordinators are stepping in and saying, you really need to think about all of your vendors. And desserts is typically probably one of the last to get booked. I am turning away so many August couples right now. I'm blown away that last minute. So I'm really excited to see my year starting to book out and having much earlier brides. So my wedding season this year didn't officially start till May. Next year, so far, my first January actually will start. I have a January already booked in April. So it's starting to book a lot further out, which for me and my family, I'm having to plan my family's life out a lot sooner in advance. So
what is that like? Do you enjoy that? Is it stressful? I mean, I know that, if you have like a normal 9 to 5, you can take a week off or call out sick. But when you're like a wedding professional and you're booking, a year out, do you enjoy that? Is that stressful?
Well, it's funny. I just had this conversation with my husband the other day. Is that I was kind of caught off guard with how early brides are wanting to book for next year. I don't really have plans for vacations and things. So the nice thing for me, being my own business owner, is that I don't have a storefront. So I work out of a commercial kitchen, and I'm able to pick and choose how busy I am and when I want to take time off with family. And so I'm kind of like, oh, I already have to think about next summer and actually early spring next year, which I know my boys have events that I'm scrambling online to see when do we have to go to Houston if my son makes it to Worlds for Robotics. So trying to fit that in. So it is great to be booked so far out, but on the other hand, family life, I'm like, oh, I actually might miss a few things next year, which I've always held a job that has allowed me not to miss out on those things for my boys. So it'll be an interesting year. It'll be a learning year next year, definitely, with the advanced bookings.
Yeah, and I do to echo that, in terms of brides, we were at the Snohomish Wedding Tour too, and having these conversations with brides and grooms now for 2019 is so refreshing because you do get these and I'm sure with desserts, these last minute, I'll get an email, hey, so, we were thinking about maybe potentially, and they'll be June 30th. And you're like, no, we've been that is a crazy day. We've been booked, and they're like, it's just the nugget in their head. And you're like, well, no, there's I've already turned down a bunch and we are booked and, you know,
Right.
but
Yeah.
so, I mean, I think like for any vendor and for, you know, like any brides and grooms, like book the vendors in advance,
In
you
advance,
know,
yeah.
and like figure out, you know, make a list of like what you want and what's important to you. But like, I do think it's getting to that time where like Seattle is so competitive in terms of like the seasonality that we have and the dates.
Yes.
That, you know, I mean, you know, I have 2 Saturdays in August next year and, you know, gone now. You know,
Yeah, I have 2 dates in 2 prime dates in August
Yeah.
that are gone for where we live in the area we live in, because our summer doesn't really start till then for nice weather, which was very surprising to me. I almost didn't book them because I was like, that's a long ways out. And especially with my line of business, of course, you know, I'm working with fresh ingredients. I never know what the cost of butter is going to be. Vanilla has gone through the roof, which affects my pricing. So I'm having to give that caveat of here's kind of, you know, where we're at price wise, but it might have to change depending on butter, eggs, vanilla. If it goes up again, oh my word, I don't know what I'm going to do because it's like gold right now. So, and they're all really comfortable with it. It's built into my contract. You know, if ingredients goes up, sorry, but I'm going to have to change your pricing.
That's crazy. I would never have thought that the price of like vanilla.
Oh yeah.
Why is that? Just
So vanilla used to be for a bottle $8.99, and then a major farm, a major producer, it got flooded, and it went up to $35 a bottle. Yeah, it literally went from $8.99 a bottle to $34.99.
Wow.
Overnight. It was crazy. Same thing with chocolate. I use a free trade chocolate, and one of the farms that I get chocolate from, they had a big flood also. And so I couldn't get chocolate in the bulk amounts that I had wanted for a while because they lost their crop. So it can be very temperamental.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you do more than one wedding per day?
No. So Hey Sweets is me, myself, and I. If I have a really big wedding, I will have someone come the day of to help me set up. But as for baking and planning and meeting with customers, it's just me. And that allows me to give 100% of my attention to each wedding, and I can give all focus, and I'm not worried about multiple weddings. So no, I try not to do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This summer, I actually have one weekend in August that is crazy, but 2 of the days are just cutting cakes. And the Saturday is a huge 400-person wedding. Huge, huge wedding. So no, just one. I would be pulling my hair out and it'd be gray.
Talk about the process of working with the clients. I mean, is it just the baking that you love, or is it kind of the seeing the completed vision?
It's all of it. All of it. I mean, I'm a mom of 2 boys. I live in a house of boys. I'm a very girly girl. I love weddings. There's nothing more exciting than a wedding and seeing it all come together. So I start out normally either a phone call or emails, kind of talking back and forth about their date, where their venue is, kind of, you know, what they're looking for. Then we will do a tasting. So we will meet. I bake out of a commercial kitchen. It's not a pretty place, so we don't meet there. I go to my clients. So it's comfortable in their own setting. I go all over Washington. And we meet, they pick out a few things. We kind of design a table together. We talk about display items. If I have the cake stands, I've really downgraded over the last couple of years because they take up a lot of room. It takes up a lot of room to keep cake stands, but I have a huge collection. I love them everywhere I go. I'm always looking for cake stands. So if I have them and it goes with their theme, their decor, what they're looking for, they are theirs to use. I do not charge extra. I don't charge a rental fee for my cake stands or my platters or plates. And then if we do have to rent, then I will meet up with them at one of the many different rental companies. We'll kind of choose, what will look best, plan the table out together. And then we kind of touch base about a month before, make sure, numbers haven't drastically changed, that they don't want to make any flavor changes. And then I show up on the day of and produce a beautiful dessert table that they were dreaming of and hoping that their guests all love everything that they have.
What are some of the biggest challenges maybe that people don't think about that you go through, or the hardest things about kind of what you do?
Well, one of the hardest things around this area, and a reason why I do not do stacked big wedding cakes anymore, is driving with cakes. I have told my husband since I started this that I want a neon sign for the back of my car that says, "Cake on board, stay back 50 feet." So driving, it's always, the day of delivery is always very, I get very anxious once everything's loaded, that it leaves the kitchen and shows up at the venue the exact way. But I, of course, always come prepared with buttercream and everything in case there is, a slam on the brakes and everything shifts, which does happen out here in the Seattle area. We have crazy traffic.
I stumbled across a Facebook video the other day of cake fail kind of things where it'd be like a big 20-foot thing with little plastic, and it fell over, fell in the pool. And it was just kind of funny. I mean, a lot of the stuff was dated.
Yes.
You could tell it was from the 80s and these big extravagant. But I mean, it was funny. I mean, I couldn't help but laugh. I mean, I would probably be upset if that was my wedding cake.
Yeah, it has happened. I have had a few fails in the past, and with that anxiety, I don't want that anxiety to pass on to my customers. So I'm like, we're going to go with cutting cakes. And also, I'm a buttercream only designer. I don't work with fondant. It's a personal thing. I'm not a big fan of it, and it's really finicky to work with. So I design in buttercream, which is nice because you always bring extra with you, and you can always fix a little dimple here or there when setting up.
Yeah, we had a wedding on Memorial Day, and it was a nice, I mean, you could tell it was a really nice cake. And you could tell in the corner, and we don't know if it was a kid
went and swiped it out. That's always, I'm like, do you put a sign up that says, "Stay back, don't touch till the bride and groom"? Some of them do it. It also, depends on where the dessert table is set in the venue. If it's, with everybody in the same room, or if it's set off somewhere where somebody can't see it and have a watchful eye on it. It's so funny. I've even had people, as I'm setting up the dessert table, before the wedding has even started, "Oh, can I have one of those?" No, you can't have that before the bride and groom do either cut the cake or have a piece of pie or whatever they're going to do for their dessert table. No, this isn't for you to touch yet.
People love desserts. The wedding on Monday, the offbeat one, I was taking shots because they had just set up the cake table, and so we got done at 5. So this was probably 3. So, okay. I mean, this was not a late, where it's 9 o'clock, we're all starving. I think it was 3 o'clock. They had just done past apps. And I think it was the grandfather of either the bride or the groom was I'm trying to take shots of this. And he's coming up. And I said, "Oh, sir," I said, I think we all need to wait, acting like I would try to do it too.
Right,
just, "Oh yeah, man, we got to wait." But, and then his daughter had come up and was like, "Oh, we need to go." He's like, "Well, I'm hungry." And she's like, "Well, no, the buffet is coming. There's still more food." But people love,
they do dessert. It's a sugar. You love it. You love it. And it looks so good. And which makes me happy because I put a lot of heart and soul into every piece that I make, and meeting with my brides and grooms about, how do they want their cupcakes to look? What do they want on top of their brownies? How decorated do you want your sugar cookies? So it's a work of art for me, and it's fun, and I get really excited, and I literally wait on pins and needles till after the event to hear back from them. Did you love it? Was it everything that you had hoped for? Your guests, did they enjoy it? So it really, I get so invested into each wedding that I do, or event, because I don't do just weddings. I do birthdays, baby showers, bridal showers. I do dinner parties. I do corporate events. But every single item that I bake for, I put so much of myself into, and I take great pride in my work.
Is it nice to have that creative outlet? I mean, do you
Yes,
view it that way?
I do. Yeah, that's definitely my creative side. I don't do a lot of like arts and crafts, but I used to when I was younger and before kids. Kids take up a lot of your time, and you give up a lot of your hobbies. And so this really allows me to try new things, new techniques. There's always something new coming out in the dessert world to try. And I love being able to present that to my customers. For the wedding tour this weekend, I actually did painted buttercream on my cakes, and I used glitter, and I painted sugar cookies. So I used a couple new techniques that I've been playing around with, and the tour was a great way to put it in front of people to get their feedback. And it went over like gangbusters. I absolutely loved it. So I'm like, great. So I'm going to spend more time finessing these techniques and creating it's just different ways to add a different style and more options for my customers to choose from.
Do you find it difficult to stand out? Is the market, is it a real competitive market? Talk about that.
Yes, it is a competitive market, but everybody does their own unique spin on desserts. Everybody has a different recipe. There's always something new coming out, a different style. But honestly, whether it's me versus another, dessert company, everybody works together. And if I am in a bind, I have my list of other dessert providers that can help me out in a pinch. And it's really nice because I've created some great friendships, over the years. So yes, it is competitive, but everybody has their own niche and their own personality. And I may not click with a bride, but that's okay because I'm going to refer them to someone that I think would be perfect for them.
What would you say your niche is then in terms of how you like to portray you and your company?
I would say that I'm a scratch baker. So I use fresh ingredients. I'm small batch because it's just me. I don't take on multiple events per day, per weekend. So I can really focus on getting good, fresh ingredients. I live in a rural area where I have access to farmers markets and tons of farms that I can go and get fresh ingredients from. Like right now, I have a couple of weddings this summer that require rhubarb for strawberry rhubarb pies. I think I've kind of flashed back this summer to the 70s between carrot cakes for cutting cakes to bundt cakes to strawberry rhubarb. So right now I'm literally getting all the rhubarb that I can, processing it, freezing it, getting it cut up and ready to go. So I have it stored and ready, access to fresh berries, make my own preserves. So just being able to I don't make things in huge quantities. It's for that event. And when I shop for ingredients, it's for that event. It's not for the month.
We had a carrot cake. Does that mean
Did
that
you?
we were?
No, it's just, it's funny. Things come in trends and waves. And I have been a little shocked at how big the request for carrot cake has been this year. I normally probably make one a year, and it's normally for my husband because he likes it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I make it for him because he likes it. But I have 4 brides this summer that I'm doing carrot cakes for. Bundt cakes, mini bundt cakes. Bundt cakes. Bundt cakes are huge trend coming back. And strawberry rhubarb.
It's like what old is new, and
Exactly. Yeah.
Dorothy likes that it's carrot cake, so it has to be more healthy because it's got nuts in it, right?
Well, see, everybody likes a different carrot cake. So I have a base carrot cake, which is just your carrots with, just your spices. Then you can literally go from a carrot cake to a loaded carrot cake, massive, from coconut in it to pineapple to nuts, golden raisins. I mean, there's so many add-ins that you can, and everybody likes something different. So it's fun when they say carrot cake. I'm like, what does that mean to you? Like, I can make it this way, or you can choose all of these different ingredients to add in. And it's pretty much my loaded carrot cake for the summer.
Talking about trends, how do you deal with the gluten-free kind of trend? Or I don't know if it's a trend or lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle, I think, more out here. I think, it's more an intolerance out here. So I can offer gluten-free items with the caveat that I do not work in a designated gluten-free kitchen. So there is cross-contamination. But when it comes down to gluten-free, I always tell them I have one other person in the business that I refer to that makes absolutely phenomenal gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan-free desserts. And I'm like, I can make it for you, yes. But if you want like phenomenal, if you don't bake that way all the time, it's not a finesse for you. And if I'm not 100% like, oh, this is to die for, because that's what I think every dessert should be. You should take a bite and be like, oh, then I send them off to a local baker.
Talk about, I should have asked this earlier, but the cake at your own wedding. What did you guys do?
So I had the big, huge, stacked cake. We had over 400 people at our wedding. It was gigantic. My husband's family and my family are the first 2 originating homesteading families in Monroe. So everybody was invited to our wedding. It was ginormous. The bakery that did our cake is still in business down in Kent. Our cake is still offered. I have never ordered it since, because I kind of prefer my own baking. But it was massive, huge, beautiful buttercream cake with cascading flowers down it. It was your traditional wedding cake. But it would have never come into our minds 18 years ago to do a dessert buffet. It wasn't a thing. I mean, you literally went to the wedding shows and you tasted cake after cake after cake after cake to the point that you're like, I don't care. It's cake.
Do you do a lot of tastings for your clients?
Yeah, so I always offer a tasting. I do charge a small fee of $25, but if they end up booking with me, that fee just goes towards their total cost. Because I'm not a bakery. I am a bakery, but I'm not a storefront where that overhead is covered in day-to-day operations. So yes, I always recommend doing tastings. The kind of nice thing about, the wedding tour was that people got to sample my stuff. So now those brides that I'm following up with, those aren't ones that we have to schedule tastings. Now we just have to sit down and do the fun part, right? Choose what they want, how many different options they want to offer their guests, and, draw out a beautiful dessert table with stands and, do you want flowers? Do I need to coordinate with your florist? So, yeah.
So you do a lot of that coordination as well.
Yeah. I get as much information from my brides and grooms as possible to meet with their florist, because especially if they're not going to do a cake topper and they want flowers, I need to know are you going to have a set piece there for me that I just place on top? Or do you want your florist? Do I need to, make sure that the cake's there at a certain time that you want your florist to put the flowers on the cake? Or are they going to leave stuff for me to, set organically on the cake? And then it's always nice to kind of tie the dessert table in with a few similar flowers that you have around the venue to kind of make everything cohesive. So I always recommend that they have a piece or two for their dessert table.
Because that was, flashing back now, that was actually kind of like a big sticking point at our wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't have it was pretty, standard. Like I don't think we had that many issues kind of planning, but that was because we had our cake through the venue by a third party. And there was the issue of like, okay, when the cake gets there, like they wouldn't do the flowers, but then the flower person wasn't sure if they would do them. And it was like, but it was like a thing where I'm like, I don't really, somebody needs to do
it. Yeah. So I always actually, before I came in, I was emailing with a coordinator for a wedding coming up this summer in August. And between talking to the bride last night and talking to the wedding planner, getting kind of the ideas together so she can go to the florist to make sure. And then basically we decided that I'm just going to place flowers organically on the cake, which means then I need to make notes for myself that I need to make sure I have my shears with me, that I have floral tape, because you can't stick fresh flowers into a cake. You shouldn't stick them. There's particular flowers that are okay, but if you took a poinsettia and stuck it in, that's a poisonous flower, and you put it into a fresh cake, that's not good. So, there's things that I need to bring with me if I'm doing the flowers. The florist is just going to drop them off. They're going to be by the table, and then I'm going to put them in. And if they're going in a cake, then the stems have to be wrapped.
See, that's fascinating. Who would have thought about that?
Well, yeah. It's something that you learn as you're in the business. And yeah, you wouldn't think that by putting a fresh flower, but you got to think about it, right? When you cut a flower, there's always some, they're live. So stuff comes out of their stems. You're sticking that into buttercream and cake, then that means that you're going to eat it. And unless it's an edible flower, you really shouldn't be eating that.
Well, I mean, that's obviously why you need to hire somebody that knows what they're doing, because I just, that's all I do is stick poinsettias in my cakes before I eat them. I have no idea. What do you, and that actually segues to a question I wanted to ask. What do you, as a baker, as a dessert maker, wedding vendor, what do you wish that people knew more that they don't know, either when they approach you or when they get ready for the wedding? What do you wish that clients knew more?
I wish they knew more of like what flavors they like and don't like. Not, I want everybody to enjoy this. The dessert table is a great representation of the couple getting married, right? It's a showcase of their likes and what they like. That's what should be showcased on your dessert table. So what do you like when it's your birthday? What do you have to have every year? Or at Christmas, what is the dessert that you have to have? So come with, a better idea of kind of flavor-wise, what are you looking for? And then my part is to then take that and go, okay, so we're going to stick with a color palette. So how about if we do, if it's, let's go with like the color theme from the guild, the wedding tour that we just did. I was at Maroney Meadows and our colors were white, green, and gold. So I did sugar cookies that had painted green glitter on, because I do royal icing cookies. So those were painted. I did coconut lime cupcakes. So the green and the white came out in the cupcakes, decorated with lime zest and toasted coconut. I also did pistachio brownie bites. So the green color came out of that. And then I did parfaits that had golden kiwis in it. So it kind of brought out that greeny gold and white color. So kind of taking different flavor palettes and giving them different options to make sure that everything's cohesive with either their colors or their theme.
As somebody that my dessert is a box of Oreos in the fridge,
They can be dipped in any color.
lemon zest icing, and that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Talk about, I mean, you talked about, trying new techniques and things. I mean, what's like the new thing right now, or what is the big hotness?
Well, there's always more than like one. So, painting with buttercream is becoming really popular. And then the smooth glazed, shiny cakes are a really big one. And I'm playing around with that. It's really tricky. And the letters and number stacked they're cookie cakes. So they're, like 2 feet by 2 feet. And it's either like a monogram in a couple of layers with frosting, just round dollops in between. And then on top, covered with flowers and macarons and fruit. So it's really pretty, but it's like, it looks like a cake, but it's actually a sugar cookie. I haven't ventured out into that one because I don't want a cookie cake. I want either cake or I want a cookie. So yeah, there's always something new, but the big thing that I'm really playing around right now is painting with buttercream.
Do you struggle with tasting too much? Do you find, or is it? I was curious about that. If
right?
you're like a caterer,
everybody's like, how do you not weigh 1,000 pounds? I have been working with my recipes for a very long time, to the point that I don't really have to even look at them unless I'm like quadrupling, the recipe. Then I have to do math in my head to increase the volume. But no, unless it's a brand new recipe, I really don't taste a lot. My boys are my guinea pigs. My husband and my boys love...
They're 1,000 pounds.
No, my boys are a beanpole. Beanpoles. They luckily got my side of the family's metabolism. They're beanpoles. But they complain that they're kind of spoiled. They are always having my desserts, and when they have functions at school parties and stuff, people are bringing store-bought stuff, and they're like, there's cookies waiting at home. So my testers, my boys are very honest whether they like something or not. My youngest is very adventurous in flavors. So when I have, a couple of years when I started baking with lavender, he was my guinea pig. And just last week, he's like, when are you making your lavender cupcakes again? And I said, actually, this summer, because I'm making them for my sister's baby shower. So he's like, oh, good. You have not had anyone order those in a really long time. Because there's always extra, and it always comes home to my house. And either my kids eat it or my husband takes it to work. And his employees really appreciate that.
I guess just from your, I think obviously cake's important to the wedding, desserts are important. What is your philosophy of food or desserts like in that place? Like, where do you see your place? I could say I see desserts as what brings everybody together. Like, what is your philosophy? Where do you place yourself in kind of that, the snapshot of that wedding day, the importance of the dessert table?
Well, I think that sticking with tradition, it's still a really important piece. You have your toasts, you have your father-daughter dance, you have your groom and mom dance, and then you have your cake cutting ceremony, whether it's a cake cutting or whatever that is. That's a big part where that's kind of like right before the party really starts. Everybody, at a birthday party, you do your gifts and everything, and you kind of then end with blowing out the candles and cutting the cake, and everybody, dessert's about gathering and sharing and enjoying something sweet together. So I see my part just as important as the officiant who starts the wedding, everybody has their place. You've got whether you say dessert is open or they actually do a cake cutting ceremony, then that leads into the party. And then when people are out on the dance floor, they always, if there is a dessert table, they are always making extra trips back to the dessert table to grab a bite here and there. And that's what's really nice about doing mini desserts, because you can have multiples instead of one piece of cake. Because when the cake's gone, it's gone. And I always bring more than what my brides and grooms have ordered. There's always extra because people always come back for more.
I do think you could have like a couple different of a dessert without it. Like, I think Jim Gaffigan always made a joke where, like, if you ask somebody like, "Oh, I ate a whole pizza," you'd be like, "Oh, good for you." But if like, "Oh, I ate a whole cake," you'd be like, "Man, you got a problem."
Right.
And like, maybe like, like one piece of cake, man, if I have 3 pieces of cake, but yeah, if you have like
mini desserts, they're either the items I make, they're either a bite or they're 2 bites. So 1 bite, you're like, "Oh, well, that's just like 1 fork of a cake." Well, I can come back and get some of that, or I can come back and get some of that. And when you've been out on the dance floor dancing and having a drink, you definitely want to grab something sweet and have in your hand to, sustain you on the dance floor.
In terms of, moving forward now, what are your goals, in the next year? Where are you looking to kind of expand to?
So my big dream since I started this was that I wanted a retail space. I've been helping my girlfriend close down a retail clothing store. She's going out of business. And so I've been filling in here and there in the retail capacity. I don't want a retail store anymore. So plans have kind of changed. What I'd like to do is I would like to have my own dedicated kitchen laid out my way that works best for me. Currently where I'm at, I don't have a marble top where I can work with chocolate because I like to play with chocolate. So that is our goal. That's where we're saving up all of our extras, is to build out our own commercial kitchen.
Up in Monroe?
No, well, the kitchen I work out of is in Monroe, but I live in Snohomish.
Okay.
More the Maltby area. I'd like something a little bit closer to home, just so that my travel time isn't so far. I have been, up until this last summer when I'm at a new kitchen in Monroe, which fell into my lap, and I have been absolutely ecstatic that it's available to me because they don't share it with anyone, which has been phenomenal for me. I have been traveling to Woodinville, Redmond. You kind of have to pick and choose who has availability. We don't have a lot of commissary kitchens up in the Snohomish County area. So it's been a struggle over the years. Now I have a dedicated kitchen that I know that I can go to whenever, but it would ultimately be great if I could build my space out to how I bake.
I do think that that's a tough balance, or to try to, like, I don't know if there is a right or wrong. I mean, I just interviewed Dan Manning for the podcast, and like he has his own studio, and like there's lots of photographers that are home based. I'm home, we're in my living room. And it's like, would I be more, productive if I had my own studio space? Like probably, but then you obviously you have to weigh like the risk,
and the cost and the insurance and all of that. But where I'm at, well, one, I don't want to bake in my house. I like to get out of my house. I do all, and I'll probably always keep it this way, to do all paperwork and all business out of my office in my house, because I don't need to go to the kitchen and do that. But it's nice to escape, and also I'm a night owl. Once I'm done with my family for the night, I leave the house at about 8:30. Literally, we'll get done with dinner, and I will pack my stuff up, and I'll be like, see ya. I won't come home till like 2 o'clock in the morning, which is how I like. I can go to the kitchen, crank the music up. I am not disturbing anybody, because who I share the kitchen with, they're never there past 6 o'clock. So it's me. I can come in my sweats and my t-shirt and just do my thing, jam out, and have fun. I love baking at night.
Awesome. Well, it's been so fun having you come in today. I've enjoyed, meeting you now
Yeah,
face
me
to
too.
face, and thank you so much for, taking the time to come in. If people wanted to learn more about, your company and what you guys do, what would you have them check out?
My website is heysweetsbuffets.com. I am on Facebook and Instagram. You can follow me at Hey Sweets Buffets on both of those. And I will be at the Big Fake Wedding this year at the 101 in November on the 15th. So if they want to kind of see another, what a wedding setup would look like and what kind of a display I would do, that would be my next show. Otherwise, it's just the Guild.
And for people that don't know, right, that's a wedding show where they set it up.
They set it like a real wedding. They have couples come in and kind of do a vow renewal, and the whole place is set up like a real wedding, like kind of similar to the Snohomish Wedding Tour at each venue that we did.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in. Be sure to check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. And thank you so much, Melissa.
Thanks, Reed.
Thanks a lot. This has been Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Thanks. Bye.